Many people understand what this paper means. This is the paper that came out to say that we were at war with Japan. Many people understand that. That was World War II. This paper is an actual newspaper from December 8, 1941. This was after Pearl Harbor was attacked. Everybody knows about Pearl Harbor. Everybody knows pretty much how the war ended. But nobody really knows how the war began. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight here on how the war actually began between America and Japan. Japan at the time was trying to invade China and Indochina. And they were after the raw materials that were in China. They wanted to dominate China, which most of the world was against, obviously, because you don't invade another country just because you want what they have. It doesn't work that way. So we had gotten together with allies in Germany, America did, and we had actually, on November 26th, 1941, had drawn up an ultimatum that actually would say that this is what needs to happen. It basically said, and this was actually called the Hull Note, and it was made by Cordell Hull, which was our Secretary of State at the time. And he just said that, this is what needs to happen. You need to withdraw, you need to do this, or economic sanctions, things like that, which would occur even more than they were at the time, because a bunch of countries along with us and our allies were also doing the same thing. We were withdrawing from Japan because of what they were doing. We thought we were in peaceful talks. Now remember, the Hull Note that Cordell Hull actually put forth on November 26, 1941, it wasn't long after that, December 7, 1941, that Pearl Harbor was suddenly attacked. We had no idea that this was going to happen. We really didn't know that this was this far off. We thought we were in peaceful talks. We didn't think that this was actually going to happen. So, when they attacked Pearl Harbor, of course, now we declare war on Japan. And as you can see here, a lone vote cast against joining conflict. And the Japs claim a crushing blow against Navy, which they did. They actually did put quite a bit of our equipment out of service. What had happened is they had advanced further and further along all through the different islands going there, and as from Japan to America, they tried to overtake islands. So when we started the war, we actually started pushing them back toward Japan through all the islands. And so we never allowed Japan to actually get in close enough to our territory, to American soil. And that was good, because we kind of pushed them back and kept them back to Japan. As we pushed them, this is what happened all the way along the course of the war between Japan and America. We had pushed them back far enough to where we got to the mainland. Now, in the works, we had the atomic bomb. And everybody knows about the atomic bomb and how it ended the war. But what happened was, I believe it was 1943 when we started development on the atomic bomb, and up to 1945. Now, we had finally pushed the troops back to Japan, and now we were about to invade Japan, and we knew it would be bloody. We knew that if we invaded Japan, it was just going to be a massacre of American and Japanese troops. We were trying to avoid this. So, just a matter of weeks before we actually dropped the first atomic bomb, we had asked Japan to surrender. We had told them that we really needed them to surrender, that, this needs to come to an end. We don't want to put our troops in with your troops. So the leaders of Japan decided that they would continue. They didn't want to stop. They thought that if we were saying something like that to them, that we would probably be the first ones to surrender then, rather than risk all those lives. They didn't think that we were saying it for another reason, that, hey, we're about to do something big if you don't surrender. So they decided to push forth. In our interest, we were thinking of our own American soldiers, as well as Japanese soldiers. But more, of course, our own American soldiers, because We knew that if we dropped one of these bombs, that we had just learned the technology, and we would only test it once. We really knew nothing about it, hardly at all. We knew it could do a lot of destruction, but we didn't know long-term effects afterward. So we decided to go ahead and do this to save soldiers' lives. So when we did, we dropped the first bomb on Hiroshima, and that bomb just about leveled all of Hiroshima. Many casualties, tens of thousands of people right off the bat. The intense heat that occurs from this bomb would have just melted people as they were standing there. So, Japanese government then knew that something big, we had discovered something big and that they needed to do something. So leaders sat down and tried to decide, what are we going to do? Well, a couple weeks went by, and we decided, okay, we'll push one more time. We dropped another one near Nagasaki. Didn't quite hit exactly where we wanted it to. It hit a little off target. But again, it showed what these bombs can do. And again, another 10,000 casualties right away. But then they started seeing that from the Hiroshima bombing, that these people were having effects long after the bomb had already been dropped, or they were dying because of radiation poisoning and things. The leaders sat down, they decided, we need to do something. There was only one guy who decided that he wanted to keep pushing forth. He said it was better to die than surrender to the Americans. That was his whole thing through the whole war, was that Japanese would rather die than surrender to us. So we knew that they would never surrender, and that's what brought us forth to Hiroshima, dropping the bomb there. We knew they would never surrender to us. They would always continue to keep fighting. And we didn't want to do that. So we decided to drop the bomb. Yes, it did take a lot of casualties, a lot of civilian casualties, and that was very sad. It really was. But when you see what really happens in war, in order to get things to go the way they should be going, sometimes these things happen. And war is not a good thing at all. But this is what we have to do. Otherwise, you would have rogue nations trying to take over other nations that shouldn't be doing what they're doing, So anyway, so in the end, they did surrender because only one of the leaders decided he didn't want to, but the rest all forced him into doing it. I believe he also killed himself after that because he didn't want to deal with thinking that that the Japanese were surrendering to America. And so that was the end of the war. That the atomic bomb, in a way, was the worst thing discovered. As far as the one who actually invented the bomb, he felt, like this was being used for the wrong purpose. But it actually did help. It actually did save a lot of lives. And yes, it did take a lot of lives, but it saved a lot as well. In the end, it was good for both American and Japanese soldiers. They didn't have to invade and didn't have to go through a lot of bloodshed. I think now most of us will understand a little more of why this conflict happened. And you can better understand U.S.'s history in World War II. And war is a terrible thing. Sometimes drastic things are needed to end suffering. And it's hard to be the policeman of the world. But we are, and like it or not, we are the policemen of the world. We're the strongest nation, so we are the ones who have to get involved in all these affairs. If we don't, then, somebody else may have to, but they're not going to be as powerful as we are, so we have to do these things. And that's just, it's unfortunate that war has to happen, but somebody's got to be there to kind of make sure everything goes okay. So hopefully you have enjoyed this, and I hope everyone has learned a little more from or about our history in America. Thanks.